Hello, everybody. Welcome into Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today, we have a big show for you. It is Friday. It is a pre-recorded show, so this is being recorded on Wednesday, July 3rd. So I apologize if some of these power rankings might seem a little absurd to you, but I hope everybody's having a great July 4th. I hope everybody is going to have a great weekend. I'll be back on Monday to talk about all of that with you guys. But today's show, we're going to finish up our NFC South coverage. We did the Panthers and the Saints yesterday. Today, we're going to finish up those two. We're going to do an offseason review and a schedule prediction for both the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Atlanta Falcons. We'll give them a grade for the offseason. We'll give them a record for the upcoming season. And then it is Friday, so we do have our MLB power rankings fresh off the press for you. Very excited to give it. It is a big sports weekend. So before we get into any of that, though, remember that if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, you know what to do. Go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate every single one of you for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Friday afternoon. But like I was saying, we are going to start off our show today going over the next team in the NFC South, this one being the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the defending NFC South champions, coming in after a pretty solid offseason, right? You talk about an offseason where they were kind of in flux. They weren't really expected to make a playoff or win a playoff game last season, and yet they go in, they bring Baker Mayfield, and he is back to the old Baker, the Baker that won a playoff game back in Cleveland, instead of the Baker that we saw leaving Cleveland as he was hurt. He's healthy. He gets paired up with Mike Evans. He gets paired up with the rest of that Buccaneers offense, Chris Godwin and everyone involved, and he does his job, brings them to a playoff in a messy division. I don't expect this year to be too different. We talk about this Bucs offseason. We talk about an offseason where instead of adding, which is something they could have done, they focused on in-house, which is arguably more important. Their biggest moves this offseason were re-signing players. Players like Baker Mayfield, players like Mike Williams, players like Levante David. These guys, Jordan Whitehead, these guys that they had to bring back in to be a successful team, right? This is what happens. They were coming back from a really obviously a great run with Tom Brady, and they immediately give it off to Baker Mayfield, and he exceeds expectation. And that's now the expectation is a little bit higher for them. We'll see what they did outside of just re-signing those guys. And let's start off in the draft, because that's where the offseason really begins for everybody. Excuse me. Round one, they grab Graham Barton out of Duke, and I think, that is a great pick. He's a guy that can play center. He's probably going to play center here for the Buccaneers on the depth chart. They have him listed as a center, and he's a guy that was probably the best interior offensive lineman prospect coming out of college. In the second round, they get an edge rusher. After you lose a guy like Shaq Barrett, you need more rushing, and getting a guy in Chris Braswell, who comes out of Alabama in the second round, is a good work, and is a good pick. And outside of that, they got more depth. Tyke Smith out of Georgia, again, blue chip school, position of need. The rest of them is just a bunch of flyers, and I like their draft. It wasn't anything crazy, but they did a good job with the picks that they had. They had an extra third and no fifth. They just had your standard 7 picks. I really love Graham Barton, though, and I think that's going to be a huge addition as, they pair him up with Tristan Wirfs, who was a great draft pick just a couple of years ago. This offensive line is going to be really good. Tristan Wirfs on left tackle, Ben Bredson at left guard, Graham Barton there at center. Cody Mach and Luke Godecki. There's room for improvement, but I'd say this is going to be an above average offensive line, and that's where this starts in the trenches. Obviously, it's a huge get when you can bring back your quarterback who you had success. Baker Mayfield agreed to a 3-year, $100 million deal to come back, and a lot like a lot like the Giants deal with Daniel Jones. It's basically just a 2-year deal. First 2 years are 30 million guarantee, and the third year is 40 million unless the Bucks get out of it. So there's an out after 2 years. This isn't a contract that they gave saying, "Oh, you're going to be our guy forever." 3 years is not that long. They also were able with a relatively smaller QB deal. Now they still did pay him $100 million, right? 33 million dollars a year if you're going by averages. They still did pay him a lot of money, and he deserves it for bringing back the team. But the real key to this, outside of bringing Baker Mayfield back, is you're also able to bring back Mike Evans on a 2-year, $52 million contract. 26 million. It didn't reset the market at the time, and it still isn't resetting the market. We've seen the wide receiver market explode since this deal happened. They were smart to get this early. This is huge. He's had 1,000-yard season every single time, and he's a great weapon for Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield loves throwing to him. They were great teammates. Chris Godwin should be healthy, and I think that will absolutely help them. Defensively, you bring back Levante David, linebacker. You do lose. Excuse me. You do lose. Where are my notes here? Devin White to the Eagles, his running mate, but very happy with bringing back at least one of them. To replace him, they bring in Randy Gregory, who, if he stays healthy, should be really good. As a pass rusher there. The spot that I'm a little concerned about, and I like what they did at safety. Franchise tagging Antoine Winfield Jr. It's not ideal for Antoine Winfield Jr., but being able to get him back for at least another season and then pairing him up with Jordan Whitehead, that was a huge addition for them. The interior defensive line is going to be elite. You have nose tackle Vita Vea, who Vita Vea is awesome at stopping the run, great at getting pressure up the middle. You pair him with Kalijah Kancey. If they get both of them on the field at the same time, that's a lot of body to move in the run game, and it's going to be tough to run against those two. It's tough to run against Vita Vea alone. But where I am a little concerned is at cornerback. They don't really have any elite corners. They had a couple of corners. It hasn't really worked out for them. They had a couple of corners walk on them, including Carlton Davis and Quandre Mosley. Those guys, Mosley wasn't a huge big deal, but losing Carlton Davis kind of sucks. Like I said, they also lost Shaq Barrett, who was really good as a pass rusher the last couple seasons. Ryan Jensen retires. Aaron Stinney, it's kind of a rehaul on the offensive line, and I'm a big fan of what they were able to do. Again, I really like the addition of Graham Barton there, and there's a lot of different ways they could have gone, and focusing in-house, bringing everyone back, a team that made the playoffs, and making smaller improvements on that after you have everybody locked up after the season, I think was the move. I really like what they did. It wasn't too flashy. Again, they didn't get that huge, big free agent, but they kept everyone in-house that they had to keep in-house. And that is a successful offseason to me. That was what they needed to do, and they checked all those boxes. Jason Licht did a great job this offseason. If I'm a Bucks fan, I'm very happy. I'm very optimistic for this season. I'm going to give them a B for their offseason. Maybe B minus. Again, they didn't do anything to super improve their team, but they did a great job to set themselves up for the future. And being set up for the future is what you need at this point. You have a young team that is kind of in a transitional period, right? You win a playoff game after Tom Brady retires. That's unexpected, and you're able to adapt to that success and keep everybody there. And I'm very impressed by what the Buccaneers were able to do this offseason, so I will be giving them a B for their offseason grade. In our next segment, we're going to take their nice offseason, an offseason that pretty solid. And go over their record. Going to go game by game, give them a record prediction, see if they'll make the playoffs, repeat their success from last season, as winning a playoff game. So we'll talk about all of that and more with the Buccaneers coming up next here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fiction. Everybody is the fakest. I'll make this. Every day I'm in fiction. Hoping one day I'll blow up in the basement. Stop it. Top is so vacant. I do this shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing. Sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown. Keep my waiting to be put down. Hitting your place. Don't kiss my sound. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it. I'm losing this. I'm losing shit. It's goofing me. If you choose to live, choose to dip, you choose to fight, and lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh. Feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world now? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. Feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world now? Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you were just tuning in, we've just gone over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers off-season. They did a lot of housekeeping in-house, bringing everybody back. Baker Mayfield, Mike Evans, as well as Antoine Winfield Jr. on a franchise tag, Levante David, and bringing in some solid secondary help, and Jordan Whitehead, among others. I really like their offseason. I gave them a B. In this segment, though, we are going to go over what that offseason means for their upcoming season. We'll go game by game, give them a record prediction, and if they will make the playoffs or not. But before we get into that, remember that if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate all of you guys for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Friday afternoon. I hope everybody had a great July 4th. But like I was saying, in this segment here, we're going to go over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers record prediction. We did one for the Panthers, and we did one for the for the Saints last episode. We're moving on to the Bucs here. Just an update for you. So far in this division, we've got the Panthers at 5-12 and the Saints at 6-11. Buccaneers come in off of winning their division, winning a playoff game at home against the Eagles, a huge success of a season for them, looking to see if they can continue to back that up with week 1 against the Washington Commanders. Washington, I also really like their offseason. They got a rookie quarterback in Jaden Daniels, and all reports are that he's doing great. They did a okay job of addressing the secondary. That's going to be their biggest weakness, and because of that, I think Mike Evans is going to feast week 1 against them. He's chalk him up for 2 touchdowns, 150 yards. There's not a guy on that Commanders defense that can really stop him. As far as passing goes, I'm giving the Buccaneers a win here, starting off the season. It's just a bad matchup for the Commanders. I do like this Commanders team, though. But the Bucs start off 1-0, a good start for them. Then they go up to Detroit, take on the Lions. The Lions, a team that a lot of people think has Super Bowl aspirations, and I wouldn't really disagree with them. The Lions, they signed Jared Goff. They're another team that took care of their own. They signed everybody in house that they needed to, while also adding at places that was needed to their draft. Again, we'll get into all of that when we talk about the Lions, but they think they've really did a good job drafting at positions of need. And the Lions are going to win this game. Their defense is improved. Their offense is already great from last season, and I don't see that much changing. So 1-1 heading into week 3 against the Denver Broncos. And the Denver Broncos, I keep saying it, I think are going to be one of the worst teams in the league, if not the worst team in the league. I have the Bucs taking care of business there at home against the Broncos, especially so early. I don't know if Bo Nix is going to start. I don't know if Zach Wilson is going to start. That's not the position you want to be in if you're the Broncos. And I have the Bucs taking care of business there. Then they have the Eagles at home, and that is a rematch of the playoff game. We talked a little bit about it, how they kind of surprised a lot of people. I mean, the Eagles were on a schneid there, but I think the Eagles come in and get revenge. I like what they did this offseason, bringing in Saquon, paying all their receivers. The offensive line had some work. They'll have some momentum, and Jalen Hurts hopefully will be back to himself. I have the Eagles taking this game, a revenge game for them from last season. Week 5, as the Bucs enter 2-2, they take on the Falcons on the road. That's going to be an interesting game. I'm going to give this one to the Falcons. I believe Kirk Cousins will be fine by that point. And like I said, the corners for the Bucs are a little bit concerning for me. And I think having, Drake London, having Bijan Robinson, having Kyle Pitts, they're going to be able to do what they need to against that secondary. So Kirk Cousins and the Falcons get this win as the Bucs fall to 2-3 on the season. Week 6, they take on the Saints in the Superdome. I'm giving this one to the Bucs. Again, I just don't like the Saints team. I really don't like what they've done. I talked all about it in the last episode. They're a team without direction, and I think the Bucs can come in and even with their lack of a secondary there, I think their run stopping will be able to shut down Alvin Kamara, and their linebacker core will be able to do the rest. The corners will hold up just fine, and I really like their safeties. So I'm taking the Bucs to beat the Saints here in Week 6, improved to 3-3. Then they get another tough matchup, this time against the Ravens, reigning MVP Lamar Jackson. He has a second year in that offense. His weapons are probably all going to be healthy. And again, I think that's going to be the thing. You get Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson. It's going to be tough on any defense, but Lamar Jackson, I think there's going to be a lot of quarterbacks feasting against the Buccaneers this season, and I don't think the Ravens will be any different. So they lose that game in Week 7, falling to 3-4 before taking the second game against the Falcons, this time at home. Again, I think that matchup between the two of these teams is going to be really, really tight, and I think what happens in these two games might determine the division. But I have them splitting their season series, and the Buccaneers taking the second one at home, improving back to 500 at 4-4 on the year before they go through arguably the toughest stretch that you can go through. They go through the defending Super Bowl champions, 2-time defending Super Bowl champions on the road, and then they welcome in the San Francisco 49ers, the Super Bowl losers, back to back until their bye week. Those are 2 losses. Those 2 teams are just better, and unless something crazy happens, injuries or some crazy miracle goes for the Bucs, I think they lose both of those games. So from 4-4 to 4-6 at Week 10, halfway through the season, kind of on par with everybody else in their division so far. And then they get their bye week, a nice chance to rest. Having a bye week here around Week 11 is going to be nice as you gear up for a stretch down the rest of the year where you've gone through almost all of your toughest games. If you're a Bucs fan, if you're the Bucs, right? The rest of your schedule consists of the Giants on the road, the Panthers on the road, excuse me, the Raiders, the Chargers, the Cowboys, the Panthers again, and the Saints. So there's only a couple of tough games in that schedule. Being able to stay close to 500 in that first stretch of the season, I think is going to be super important because I think they'll be able to clean up a good amount of teams here in the back half as long as they're performing to where we expect them to. And that starts off against the Giants, my New York Giants. They're going to win this game up in New York. Coming off a bye week, it's just not really close. Both of these teams actually will be coming off a bye week here, but I think the Bucs are a better version of the Giants. So I'm taking the Bucks here, improving their record to 5-6, getting back to 500 against the Panthers. I think they're just a better team than the Panthers here, and getting back to 500 before you go take on a couple West Coast teams. This is probably the toughest stretch of the last. These next three games are going to be the toughest stretch of the rest of the schedule. And this one against the Raiders, I think could go either way. If the Raiders are starting Gardner Minshew, I think that's really what it comes down to. If the Raiders are starting Gardner Minshew, he is this kind of tough it out attitude that kind of is it's kind of infectious to the rest of the team, and we see him win all these tough games. I think it'll be one of those if he's starting. The Raiders take this, and I'm projecting him be a starter. If Aiden O'Connell is back there starting, this one goes to the Bucks. But I'm projecting Gardner Minshew to be the starter out there, so I'm giving week 14 to the Raiders here before they go and face the Chargers on the road. And this is another one of those games that I think could go either way. I don't know how the pass catchers are going to go with I don't know how the pass catchers are going to be with the Chargers, but Justin Herbert is an elite quarterback, and I think he's going to make it work against. Again, the big knock of this Bucks team is the corner depth, and I just don't. They again, there's guys they can go sign. Xavier Howard is still available. Plenty of these older corners that they might be able to go add, but right as it stands right now, I'm giving the Chargers a win here. Another tight loss for the Bucks as they fall to 6-8 on the year before facing the Cowboys. And again, same story, different team. This one's on the road again. CD Lamb's going to cook, and I think the Cowboys are going to take this game as well. So heading into the final stretch, the excuse me, the Bucks are now 6-9 on the year, kind of on the bubble for the playoffs. They win these next two, they might be able to compete for the division. They get the Panthers. That's a gift, giving them a win there because these are must-win games from here on out. They're now 7-9, and don't want to spoil it, but this game could be for the division, depending on how the rest of the season goes for the other teams here. But 7-9 heading into Week 18, taking on the Saints, and I just feel like the Saints are going to play spoiler. Back home, playing a team that is kind of mediocre can be Jekyll and Hyde one day, Jekyll one day, Hyde the other. I think the Saints take care of business on Week 18, putting the Bucks at a 7-10 season, a little bit disappointing, one game back of where they were last year, and I think that's going to push them out of the playoffs. Again, I think it all is going to come down to Week 18 as long as everything goes exactly how I wrote it down. It's going to come down to Week 18, but this Bucks team, while this would be a little bit of a disappointing season, I do think that 7 wins is kind of on the lower end of where they could be. If you're looking at this schedule, especially that back half of the schedule, I think they could be anywhere from 7 to 10 wins. Honestly, they could flip their record. I'm expecting a little bit of a Baker Mayfield regression, and maybe that's not going to happen. That's why I have them here at 7-10. But I do really enjoy what they did this offseason. And like I said, anywhere from 7 to 10 wins, I have them on the lower end just because we never really know what's going to happen. It's a crazy league, the NFL is. But let me know what you think of what the Bucks will do this season. Let me know how wrong you think I am, or if you agree with me. If you think I'm insane, let me know in the comments. I appreciate it. In our next segment, we're going to do the same thing. NFL offseason grade, NFL schedule review. This time for the final team in the NFC South, the Atlanta Falcons. We'll go over their schedule, their additions coming up next here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube. Absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube.
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we've just gone over everything you need to know for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offseason and their schedule prediction. I gave them a B. I think they did a really good job fixing every hole that they had, bringing back their guys, showing loyalty, and I think that was really important, at least to build a culture, and this is kind of a transitional period for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I really like what they did. I gave them a B for the offseason, as well as going through their season. And I did have it be a little bit of a disappointing season. Had them anywhere from 7 to 10 wins. I put them at 7 wins. I did break down game by game. So if you disagree with any of them, let me know. I'll argue with you in the comments if you feel strongly about any of those. But in this segment, we are going to go over the offseason for the final team in the NFC South, that being the Atlanta Falcons. The Atlanta Falcons had quite the offseason. They had not too many moves, but they had big moves. Firing a head coach, bringing in a brand new quarterback. We'll get to all of that and more in just a second. But before we do, remember that if you would like to be an even, excuse me, I apologize. If you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments, throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate all of you guys for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful July 5th, Friday, excuse me. Hope everybody had a great July 4th. But like I was saying, we are going to get into the Atlanta Falcons here. The Atlanta Falcons are, as you might expect, division favorites after bringing in Kirk Cousins. That was the big signing this offseason. They bring in Kirk Cousins, and they're actually hit with a tampering thing. They're hit with tampering fines for it, losing a 5th-round pick next year. But outside of Kirk Cousins, which obviously that is the big addition, right? Bringing in Kirk Cousins, replacing your mess of a quarterback situation that was last year, replacing Taylor Heineke and Desmond Ridder, who, with now a quarterback that's established, that you know is good, bringing in Raheem Morris as a head coach. But it's not just Kirk Cousins that happened. They also had an interesting choice with the NFL draft, right? They had the 8th overall pick, and instead of picking a guy like Rome Odunze to help complete what would have been a great wide receiver core with Darnell Mooney on the outside and Drake London and Kyle Pitts and Bijan Robinson in the run game, they go for Michael Penix Jr. And this happens basically the same week that they sign Kirk Cousins. And Kirk Cousins doesn't seem to like it. It's a weird thing because they signed Kirk Cousins to a 4-year contract, which would take over the entire rookie deal aside from the 5th-year option of Michael Penix Jr. You don't know if you want to take that 5th-year option, especially for a guy that's an older quarterback. Now, I like Michael Penix. I like Michael Penix maybe more than the other guy. I think he was my QB2 in this draft, and he went, QB2. But all of that being said, or he didn't go QB. He wasn't my QB2. He was my QB. He was going QB4. He went QB4 in this draft, like he should have, at least in my opinion. But this is not a situation that's cohesive for him, right? You just go out and you pay Kirk Cousins over $100 million, right? Guaranteed. And now you're saying, hey, Kirk, I know we just gave you a 4-year deal, but this rookie, we are going to, mostly based on the timeline that I'm looking at here, we're saying, hey, he's going to replace you in just about 2-3 seasons, because they're going to want to take a look at Michael Penix, right? Before they say, hey, let's just give you that 5th-year option, right? They said they wanted to build like the Green Bay Packers, but, the difference was they had expiring contracts before They had to extend Jordan Love, extend Aaron Rodgers. Those guys sat for 2 years, but the contracts were up, that the timeline worked. These contracts match up perfectly. 4 years plus an option, right? This is not something that is going to be an easy transition of power to do. This is going to shake up things in Atlanta, especially if Kirk Cousins does well. Now, he's coming off of that Achilles, and it's good to have an insurance guy if you really do believe in Michael Penix. And like I said, I'm a big Michael Penix fan, but Atlanta is not the spot for him. The second round was equally as confusing. They take Rook Oroho, excuse me, when you had other first round defensive tackles at the same position still available. Washington comes in and takes him there in the second round, but Johnny Newton was still available there, excuse me. And Washington comes in and takes advantage of that. But you draft your first two picks are kind of head scratchers, right? And maybe I'm completely wrong about Johnny Newton and Ruka Rojo, but that's just my opinion. I think they really messed up this draft in an offseason that they didn't really do too much outside of that, right? They bring in Kirk Cousins, obviously. They bring in Darnell Mooney, another guy that they sign off of free agency. Ray-Ray McCloud as a returner after letting Cordell Patterson walk, who I think probably was a better returner, maybe was asking for too much money there. But I mean, the new return rules, Ray-Ray McCloud might be a big pickup there. But there weren't too many crazy additions this offseason for the Atlanta Falcons. I mean, you have a young core already established, but I would have liked them to try and build something along the defense. You have Jesse Bates, who's really good. AJ Terrell, really good in the secondary. But pass rush, outside of Grady Jarrett, no one was getting any pass rush, and it's not like anything really changed this offseason. They picked up Kentavious Street. It doesn't move me. They draft Ruka Rojo. They draft the defensive tackle in the second round, and I mean, he might be good. That's what they did this offseason doesn't really inspire me. And again, I think overall it's going to be a positive grade, and that is simply because they had such a massive upgrade at quarterback. But what's holding this back from being an A minus, B plus of an offseason is the fact that they did not address their biggest need outside of quarterback, which was pass rush. And they had the perfect opportunity to do that in the draft, if not in the first round, in the second round even, and they kind of did it, but they got, in my opinion, the wrong guy. The first round, no defensive player went until 15. You had Dallas Turner, you had Liatu Latu, you had these great pass rushers available, and nothing against Michael Penix, but that's a move for the future. You have to plan for the now before you can plan for the future, and nobody planned for the now in Atlanta, at least from where I'm sitting. So if they had gotten an elite pass rusher this offseason, if they had made a better pick in that first round, I think that this offseason, I'm probably giving an A to, because they hit all their biggest needs with huge upgrades. But instead, they sit here and they make, I think, what was a catastrophic mistake, so I can't give them anything more than a B minus. Again, they're getting a positive grade because Kirk Cousins is such a huge upgrade at quarterback. But outside of him, they didn't do anything to drastically improve this team, a team that's been middling with plenty of potential. We talk about Kyle Pitts' potential all the time. We talk about Drake London's potential all the time. Bijan Robinson came in and flashed that potential last season. Whether it was coaching, which Raheem Morris, I think, is a solid head coach hire. I like that hire. Or whether it was the play calling or the coaching, or maybe it was just the team, but they did great on offense, and they could have knocked this offseason out of the park if they just got another great pass rusher to put next to Grady Jarrett. I really do think that this team kind of squandered what could have been maybe the best offseason of the whole NFL. But I'm going to give them a B minus here. Let me know what you think of the Falcons. And in our next segment, we're going to go over the Falcons schedule game by game. We're going to give them a record, whether or not they make the playoffs in this brand new Kirk Cousins era. So stick around for that. We'll be right back here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we've just gone over the Atlanta Falcons offseason. I'm giving them a B minus, but it's a disappointed B minus. They could have been a whole lot better if they had knocked the draft out, gotten an elite edge rusher, someone to get pressure on the quarterback to pair with what is really a solid secondary. We also talked all about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We did their offseason. We gave them I think we gave them I forget I think we gave them a C plus here. They didn't do anything too flashy, but they prepared for the future. So I think we gave them a C plus there. And then we went over their record. I'm giving them 7-10 on the year, although that could be anywhere from 7 to 10 wins, because this team has like a low floor, kind of high ceiling. But I have them on the lower end. I'm expecting a little bit of a Baker Mayfield regression here. But in this segment, we're going to go over the Atlanta Falcons schedule, game by game. Give you a win-loss record every single time, and then we'll see if they make the playoffs, if they are able to get past the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the top of that division. But before we get into that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to add, go and go ahead and throw that in the comments, throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate all of you guys for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Friday afternoon. I hope everybody had a great July 4th. But like I was saying, in this segment, we're going to go over the Atlanta Falcons schedule, deep dive into their schedule, every single game. Where do we start? We start in week one. Week one against the Steelers, and this is not an easy start. We talk about a Steelers defense that is great. I don't know what's going to happen with the quarterback situation with Justin Fields or Russell Wilson, but I'm going to give the Steelers. I'm going to give the Steelers a win here. I just really like their defense, their pass rush. This is a solid Falcons offensive line, but I think we're going to start off slow on the Kirk Cousins era in Atlanta. It doesn't get really any easier. That's a game they want to win if they want to start off hot, and that continues in week 2 against the Eagles in Philly. No, that's not going to happen. They fall to 0-2 early on this season. Again, Kirk Cousins, he's coming off that Achilles. I think he starts a little bit slow. He probably gets it figured out in this game. I think going against the Steelers week 1 with coming off an Achilles, is not going to be a successful run. I think he'll be fine by week 2, week 3, but then they got the Eagles and the Chiefs, and I love how much the Eagles improved this offseason. I think they're going to be able to, I think that'll be a slugfest of a game. It's not going to be easy, but again, they're not going to be able to get pressure on Jalen Hurts, and with his ability to move around the pocket and the weapons that the Eagles have, I think the Eagles will end up taking this game, as well as week 3 against the Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes, that I think this one also could be a good game, but the 2-time defending Super Bowl champions are not going to lose to the Falcons here, at least not yet in week 3. It's a tough start to the season. 0-3. Now, it's not against easy competition, and I think if you threw them in a schedule like the Bucks, I think they're 2-1 here. You throw them in a schedule like the Panthers, they're probably 3-0, honestly. But that's just how the schedule works sometimes, and they need to bounce back. This is not saying, hey, this is going to be a bad Falcons team. I do believe in this Falcons team, but starting off 0-3 is a tough look for the Kirk Cousins era. I think they bounce back here against the Saints in week 4, though. Week 4 against the Saints on at home, probably their easiest game of the season so far. Again, I can be convinced that they beat the Steelers there, but that defense with Kirk Cousins coming back from injury, I don't think that's going to be a good sign. So 1-3 after week 4, another division game against the Bucks, and we talked about this earlier on in the show. I'm taking the Falcons here, improving to 2-3, now tied for first place in that division, with the Saints and the Bucks as well. As we head into week 6 against the Panthers. And I think they actually lose this one. 3 straight division games is not easy. They're going on the road. I think this Panthers team made some improvements, and I think Bryce Young will have a good game. It will be good for a good game every once in a while. They lose this one to the Panthers, fall to 2-4 on the season. Week 7 against the Seahawks, they get right here. They're gonna beat the Seahawks at home. Geno Smith, I think, should be the starter. I know a lot of people are talking about Sam Howell with the new coaching staff, but I think Geno Smith will be the starter there still. I really like this secondary for the. Excuse me. I really like this secondary for the Falcons, and the Seahawks have a bad offensive line, so I think the Falcons will be able to win this game in week 7, improve to 3-4 on the young season. Week 8 against the Bucks on the road. I think they split this series overall. Again, the Bucks are a good team, and on the road here in Tampa Bay, I'm giving this win to the Buccaneers. The Falcons now halfway through the season, they fall to 3-5. A tough start, but their schedule does get easier as time goes on. They got all the tough games, or most of the tough games, out of the way. The last really tough game, I think, that's on their schedule comes up next, week 9 against the Cowboys. And I do think they take care of business here. Kirk Cousins against the Cowboys, familiar opponent. And I don't know, this just feels like a game that the Falcons will win. Again, this I think this will be a fun game to watch. But I'm taking the Falcons to take down the Cowboys. And from there, there's not really too much of a roadblock, right? Sitting there after week 9, again, the real midway point of the season now, at 4-5, 500. They got the Saints, the Broncos, the Chargers, the Vikings, the Raiders, the Giants, Commanders, and Panthers. There's no one down the rest of the schedule that you're looking at and saying they can't win. They can't beat this team. They could beat the rest of their opponents. And do I think they're going to? Absolutely not. I definitely don't say that. I definitely don't think that. That starts with a division game against the Saints. I actually have them losing that one on the road. That is a rivalry right there. They will they'll split that series after week 10. And then they go to the Broncos. Again, I've talked about it a lot. The Broncos, I think, might be the worst team in football this season. I hate their quarterback situation. Their defense is kind of a mess, and there's not really too much hope coming out of Bronco land right now. They win week 11, heading into a bye on week 12, and then they get to reload for an important stretch because they're still in the thick of a division race, sitting after week 11 at 5-6 with the rest of this division. And again, we already went through the rest of the schedule after the bye: Chargers, Vikings, Raiders, Giants, Commanders, Panthers. Who scares you on that list? There's no one that really does scare you. But that doesn't mean they can get complacent, because the Chargers have a guy named Justin Herbert, and Justin Herbert is very good at football. I think he's going to use his football powers and and dismantle this Falcons team. They do lose week 13 to the Chargers, but they bounce back. A big game against the Vikings. That is a revenge game for Kirk Cousins. He's going to go off, throw for 400 yards, and they're going to dominate that one up in Minnesota. The Raiders as well. I have them winning that game in Las Vegas. Again, that one could get a little chippy. That could go either way, but I'm taking them to win in week 15. Up to this point, they're now 7-7 on the season. They've gotten back to 500 with 3 games to go. Giants, Commanders, Panthers. That sounds like a nice, easy schedule, but you don't want to look ahead, right? And I actually have them dropping the next 2 games. I think the Giants are a team that might be able to get one from some teams, and I had them going 6-11 this season, so they're not going to be too great. But uh, this is sandwiched for them in between a whole bunch of tougher teams. Uh, you know, Cowboys, Ravens, Colts, Eagles. That's what's surrounding this game for the Giants, and this is a game that I feel like they kind of get up for. They've been pretty solid against Kirk Cousins in his career so far, so I'm giving the Giants this win. Same thing with the Commanders. I think they're going to lose that game. Although this one I'm a little more shaky on actually. Um, I could go either way on this. I do have them losing this game to the Commanders, though. And then week 18, going against the Panthers for the division, I have them winning, finishing 8-9, making the playoffs. And this is a bad season for them. Like I said, I've gone through it and I've said, hey, this is not a hard schedule. This is the easiest schedule in the league, actually. There's the games that I gave them losses, 3, 4, 5 of them. 1, 2, excuse me, 3, 4, 5 of those games I could see becoming wins. This is the absolute low point for the Falcons, and I'm not convinced that Kirk Cousins will be all the way back from his Achilles, and I want to see how this coaching staff works and how that defense is going to be as we continue on the path here. I've been finishing 8-9, but this is a team that very easily could be 13-4. Right, this is an easy schedule, and I think they make the playoffs regardless. But again, much like the Buccaneers before them, I'm a little lower on their output this season. Anywhere from 8 to 13 wins is their window, and I know that's a huge window, and you're going to look at me like, oh, that's not really even a prediction. My official prediction is 8-9, but their ceiling is 13 wins with a schedule like this. Let me know what you think in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the Falcons, on anything else in the NFC South. I have the Falcons winning this division at 8-9, Bucks at 7-10, Saints at 6-11, and Panthers at 5-12. Only one of those teams is going to make the playoffs, and that is the Falcons. So let me know what you think of that division. Any other complaints you had with my with my predictions here, I'd love to hear them. But we are going to close off our show here in our next segment, doing our Friday MLB Power Rankings. So stick around for that. We'll be right back here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we've done a lot of football content. We finished up the NFC South predictions so far for this season, going over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Atlanta Falcons, their offseason and their schedule predictions. I gave the Tampa Bay Buccaneers a C+ for their offseason, and I gave the Falcons a B-. I also gave the Falcons a 8-9 record and the Bucks a 7-10 record. A little bit low on the low end for both of those. But if you have any questions, go back and take a look. I did a game by game breakdown of all of their matchups. In this segment, though, we are going to move out of the world of football and into the world of baseball. It is our Friday Power Rankings time. It's been a week. Let's see where we are in the world of baseball. But before we do, remember that if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the chat. Throw it in the comments. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate all of you guys so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Friday afternoon. I hope everybody had a great July 4th, but nothing goes better with July 4th than some baseball, and we are here to give you some MLB power rankings here today. I'm going to start off at the bottom. The White Sox at number 30, no surprise there. They continue to be the worst team in the league. Andrew Benintendi, who was bad, is hurt. They get Luis Robert back. He's probably going to get traded, but they sit there at the number 30. And then we have a change. First change in a while here at the bottom. The Rockies drop a spot and the Marlins gain one. This is simply as the standings go. Both of these teams are bad, and both of these teams know it. There's not a lot of future there. There's not a lot of hope for the rest of the season for either of these teams. I just have them flip-flopping here because the Marlins did gain a game up on the Rockies over the last week. At 27, I've got the A's. 26, I have the Angels. Getting those formalities out of the way there. That is the bottom 5 teams in the MLB. The Tigers are getting closer and closer every single week to being a mainstay here in the bottom 5, in the bottom 6. The Tigers here at 25 once again, and there's not a lot of movement at the bottom. In fact, 30 to 21 I have being the exact same as last week. Just not too much movement there. These guys are kind of treading water now or getting worse and not really making a difference. The Blue Jays are one of those teams that's kind of treading water. Vlad Guerrero was announced as an all-star starter. Curious if he does get traded at the end of this month. My bet is he does. A team like the Astros could use him. The Astros, who are climbing right now. We knew this was going to happen way back in our first power rankings. I think they were down at like 22, which good for them. Good for them making the climb. The Cubs sit here at 23. Again, not too much excitement. They're studs, they're stars. The Rookie of the Year, Shota Imijama, just is kind of falling off a cliff here. He can turn it around, but this Cubs team, I'm kind of out on for the rest of the year. The Nationals have been bad. They've been bad recently. They were in a playoff spot until they ran into the Padres. Since then, as of recording on 7/3, where this is being recorded today, they've lost 7 of their last 8, 2 straight extra inning losses to the Mets. They did call up James Wood, and that's been very exciting, but they're going to stay here at number 22 until they can get out of this schneid. I considered moving them down even. 7 of your last 8 is not where you want to be. The Pirates here at 21. Pitching is super exciting there, but the bats need to get going if they're going to climb. And the Reds fall a spot to number 20. Reds, Giants, Rangers all fall one spot, so that the Rays can climb a whole bunch. Excuse me. Actually, you know what? Diamondbacks should be at 17, and the Rays should be at 16. I apologize. That is on me for not moving the teams the right way. But Diamondbacks at 16, they fall one just because I love what the Rays are doing. It was only a matter of time before the Rays get going. Diamondbacks here at 17. Again, they're also getting better, but the Rays are more on a rocket ship climb more than the Diamondbacks are just climbing up a mountain. The Royals and the Mariners continue to slip. Both of them had great hot starts, and now both of them are sliding. They're coming back down to earth. The Royals, their pitching is running out of gas, and the offense can't quite carry it. Bobby Witt and Salvi Perez are both having great seasons, but it's not enough. The Mariners at 14, they just keep giving ground up to the Astros, and at this point, it's a 3-game difference. And the Mariners are watching that slip away very consistently. They need to get the bats going. Julio Rodriguez needs to get going if they want to have any kind of success or a postseason run. The Mets here at 13, they've been the hottest team in baseball, 14-4 as of July 3rd, since Grimace threw out his first pitch almost a month ago. Hottest team in baseball, you can't argue it. They're only a game out of the playoffs now. The Cardinals here at number 12 continue to just play good all-around baseball, and this is what it is. This is like the 2010s Cardinals, that no matter how bad they might start, they're always going to turn it around and be a great organization. And the Red Sox fall one spot at number 11, again, simply because the Astros are on a tear right now. And the Astros finally crack the top 10. They were sitting there at the bottom half of our rankings, as we talked about earlier. They're over 500 now. They continue just to get better and better. The bats are waking up. The Astros crack the top 10 at number 10 on our Friday, July 5th power rankings. Padres sit pat at 9. Also having a great season here. I thought about moving them ahead of the Braves, but I just can't quite do that yet. This Braves team is too stacked, too loaded, and I think they'll get it figured out soon. The Brewers sit at number 7. I can't move them ahead of the Twins. I kind of wanted to, but I love this Twins team the way that it's going. The pitching is starting to get it figured out, and they've been really, really good. And now we hit our top 5. These top 5 have been the same since we did our power rankings every single time, and we have a little bit of movement. The Yankees fall out of the first row. The pitching has been atrocious recently, and the bats have been enough to keep them as a good team, but the pitching needs to get it figured out again like they were at the beginning of the season if they want to climb again. The Guardians are just solid all the way around. People joke about power of friendship Guardians, but I mean, are they that wrong? Is this not a team that is kind of riding on the power of friendship here? They're very good. Steven Kwan, all-star. Jose Ramirez, all-star. One of the, I assume Emmanuel Clase will be an all-star. It's just a really, really good team. It's a really complete team, and they're showing what they could have been after an off season last year. Phillies move up one spot to 3. Bryce Harper is still hurt. He'll come back soon, and they'll continue to dominate. They move up because the Yankees move down, and the top 2 remains unchanged. The Dodgers sit there at 2. MVP frontrunner Shohei Ohtani continues to power this Dodgers team. Tyler Glasnow in conversation for the Cy Young. This team is stacked. This team is loaded. They don't even have Mookie Betts, and they continue to dominate the entirety of the MLB. And finally, wrapping it up, we have the Orioles. You want to talk about all-stars? They've got 2 of them. They've got Gunnar Henderson, who MVP candidate. Adley Rutschman, MVP candidate. This is a really, really good team, and they're only getting better. They have lots of young talent still to come up. Corbin Burns has been awesome. Another Cy Young candidate there. This Orioles team is stacked, and I love to see the Orioles good. It's always fun when the Orioles are good. But those are my MLB power rankings for this week. Let me know if you have any big gripes or gaffes with what I had to say. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Go ahead and throw that in the comments. Thank you, everybody, so much for tuning in to today's episode of Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I have been your host, Jeremy Lapidus. We'll be back on Monday going over everything from over the weekend. We'll break down the American League and National League all-star rosters in baseball, as well as pick a new division for the week to go over in the NFL. Hope everybody has a great weekend. I hope everybody had a great July 4th. I will talk to you same time, same place on Monday. Have a great one. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Let's go. I feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet. Damn, ain't that